Hey, what's up, students? Hope you're doing well. Man, I gotta be honest with you. This is pretty challenging for me, this whole quarantine life, and you can only watch so much TV, right? And hang out at home so much before it starts wearing on you. And man, if I'm being completely vulnerable and honest, for me, it's lasted a little longer than a month. You see, about 3 months ago or so, my wife and I decided it was time for me to go see a doctor. I've been having these symptoms, these spells where I just wasn't myself. And so we decided to go see a doctor, and they ran tests, drew blood, ordered an MRI. And going into it, I was anticipating that things would just come back normal and have to figure it out. But the reality is, two things showed up. One, on the MRI, there was a spot on my brain. And that was scary to receive that news. But then also, they diagnosed me with a certain type of seizure. And tell you what, going into 2020, I wasn't expecting either of those things. And the seizure, it's cool. They're able to give me some medicine and it takes care of that. What I didn't know is, man, I can't drive for 6 months. And so I literally feel right now like I'm in house arrest. I can only go as far as I can walk or run, you know? But then there's another element of the MRI. We've gone down this journey for a few months now, seen a lot of doctors. The good news is, any doctor we've seen is, they seem pretty optimistic that that spot on my brain is just something I was born with. But every doctor I've seen always ends it with, we think it's that, but there's a chance it could be something like a tumor. And only time will tell, and you'll have to get more MRIs, and over time we'll see what it really is. Man, that's scary. And when I'm not in a healthy spot, and when I mean healthy, I mean like spiritually healthy, I get kind of frustrated and angry towards God. And I even ask God, like, God, why are you allowing me to go through something like this? I don't know if you find yourself there at all, but I do know, like, over the last few days and weeks, things look different. Like senior, you received news that graduation, like you're graduated, you're done, like, but you don't get to walk. And so you've worked 13 years so hard to the finish line that now you don't really get to cross and celebrate the way maybe you thought. Eighth grader, maybe you were thinking that you were gonna do some travel ball, like softball, baseball, soccer this summer, and that was gonna affect your placement on whatever team you're gonna try out for in high school. Junior, senior, like prom, it's different than what you thought it was going to look. And all of those things cause tension inside of you. And I would call each and every one of those things maybe like a trial. Like what I'm going through is a trial. And anytime I got to a place where I'm just in a dark spot and saying, God, why would you allow this to happen to me? I kept going back, and I keep going back to James. So here's why I love James so much, is he's a real dude, half brother of Jesus, and his book that he wrote to a group of believers, a group of Christians, people who've placed their faith in Jesus, he's talking about how to have real faith in a real world. And we can actually look in James, and he's talking to this group of believers that are being persecuted, that have been dispersed in verse 1, it says. And in fact, you can flip over to Acts chapter 8 and read about how they were being persecuted and had to leave their homes and now are being scattered all over the world. And James is talking to these people, okay? So just imagine yourself in their shoes about what James is about to tell you, okay? So no matter what you're dealing with or what I'm dealing with, imagine what these people are dealing with, of being displaced, being persecuted, being beaten, being thrown in prison, and even some murdered. And James is coming to them, and in verse 2, here's what he says. He says, "Count it all joy, my brothers, when you meet trials of various kinds. For you know that the testing of your faith produces steadfastness. And let steadfastness have its full effect, that you may be perfect and complete, lacking in nothing." If I skip down to verse 12, "Blessed is the man who remains steadfast under trial. For when he has stood the test of time, he will receive the crown of life, which God has promised to those who love him." What a beautiful reminder it is that as a follower of Christ, God never said that life's going to be easy. In fact, we live in a fallen world and there's consequences of sin. And one of those consequences is trials. Like, hard things are going to happen in our life. We read in this church, these people are being persecuted for their faith. In the same way that you're going through a trial and I'm going through a trial, God never said it was going to be easy, but instead he says, man, I'm going to put these trials in your life for a reason, for a purpose. What is that? He says, so that you may be perfect and complete, lacking in nothing. See, God's heart for us isn't just happiness. He wants to bring us joy and peace and all those attributes, but God's goal in our life is to help us become more like him. And the way he does that is through trials. So the way I like to think about trials and God helping us use those trials to become more like Christ, it's kind of like a cake. Like if you think of a cake, there's multiple ingredients. Let each ingredient represent like a trial. And if I were to take an egg and just eat an egg by itself, it's gross, right? Like I don't have to tell you that. Maybe you've tried it, but eggs by themselves uncooked are disgusting, right? And then you have like oil. And if you were to just drink the oil by itself, not very good. Water by itself, you need it, but it's not good, right? And then flour and sugar and everything mixed in, like it wouldn't be good. But what God does is he puts various trials in our life to help us become more like him and to produce steadfastness, to perseverance. And as that happens, trials begin to make sense and they start mixing together. And as life goes on, you're able to look back on various trials and you can see how God used each trial in your life to become more like him. Like for instance, you might look back on a trial you dealt with and you learn that you became more patient through it. Or you look back on a trial and you can see how God used that to grow your dependency on him and his leading in your life. Or maybe you just needed his spirit to show you that you needed to be more kind. I don't know what it is, but God puts trials in our lives so that A, we become more like him, and B, so that we can show the world Christ in us. The problem with trials is they can be hard. And it can be sometimes hard understanding what God is trying to teach you in the midst of a trial. But I've learned that sometimes it's asking God, instead of looking at him frustrated and saying, God, why would you let me go through this? Instead, it's saying, God, what are you trying to teach me in the midst of this trial? I tell you what, when I start changing my perspective and asking God that question, he really begins to reveal what he's really trying to teach me. And that he's not a cosmic killjoy, but he really does love me and care about me and want what's best for me. And my perspective really does begin to change. So I don't want to presume that I know exactly what you're going through and dealing with, but I do know that I have very real trials. And when I read James 1 and counting it an all joy, my brothers, when you meet trials of various kinds, and the heart behind that is for God to help us become perfect and lacking in nothing. I read that as an encouragement that what I'm going through right now isn't a waste, but instead it's like this cake that God's using it in my own life for me to become more like Jesus and that he's hoping and helping others see Jesus in me. And so this week, take 10 minutes each day. And whatever you're dealing with, whatever your trial is, ask God, how are you using this trial in my life to become more like you? And then God, how could you be using this trial to point others towards Jesus? Hey, would you pray with me real quick? God, we thank you so much that you're a good God, that you love us, you want what's best for us. Lord, no matter what we're going through and dealing with, Lord, I pray that first and foremost you remind us that you are good and that you love us. But Lord, even if we're going through hard times and trials, God, I pray that each and every one of us can take time and go to you and ask these questions. God, how are you moving and working in our lives? And how are you drawing us closer to you? And how are you pointing and using these trials to point others towards you? So God, we thank you for that truth. I pray these things in your name. Amen.
Thanks, Tim, for that super important reminder. As Christians, when we go through trials and we persevere through those, we do have hope, and ultimately that perseverance, it builds our faith, which is awesome.
Yeah, super important to remember. Hey, before you leave, we got a couple announcements for you. After tonight, we actually have small groups going on, so if you don't know the code for your small group, text your leader, DM us, and we'll hook you up. Friday, we also have Zoom lunches, so bring your packed lunch. We'll see you there. And also, all this week, don't forget, we're bored. Send us your TikToks.
And guys, right now, we are anxiously waiting to be back together. So to really illustrate this, we have another TikTok we're going to show you.
From all of us here at Student Ministries, we miss you, we love you.
Peace out.